Welcome, everyone living on land. I'm Ammon, and we have a new guest today.
Hey, Ammon, what's going on? I'm
Yeah,
James Harner. Greetings, everyone. Greetings to the Truth Corps, wherever you are, whoever you are in the world. We're excited to come to you and have some conversations about living on the land. Right, Ammon?
yeah. So what I'm doing, and we've been working on. So I haven't been putting too much out lately, and content-wise, been working on a format, and uh, James and I got to talking. And it seemed like we had a good fit, and we might be able to work on some stuff together. So what we decided is to do a few of the what I called the conversations on land. We'll probably do some conversations, just us two, and then absolutely get some interviews going because yeah, James is. We're both the reason why I felt compelled to start making some content is because we want to bring some solutions and some positivity to this world of craziness. And yeah, why don't we have James? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll go from there.
It's interesting. Ammon and I, when we got talking about doing this together, for a while now, I've been doing a fair amount of Zooms in my business, bringing a lot of guests onto our show that we had on Facebook and in Zoom that we were teaching people about specific topics related to the business end. So I'm really excited to be able to bring some great guests on here and to really bring some conversations and some knowledge to people that are really hungry to find out how they can move forward in this crazy world of it just seems like upside down, really, quite honestly, and how we can all come back and restore our wholeness on the land. And, Ammon and I have been doing that. I've been learning about this for a number of years, and we feel like we have some real knowledge that we can share that people can take actionable advice from, and it will help them to restore wholeness in their life and take back their sovereignty.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Not only are you just you're not just a random researcher, but also like me, you've reconveyed everything back to the land and are working on this self government. And yeah, exactly what you said. It's sovereignty.
Yeah, I mean,
So
the two of us are actively involved in restoring a government in the state that we reside, that is our home. That's the land that
mhm.
we inhabit. And most people that I run across, are hungry for somebody to show them how they can do these types of things. And so for us to be able to, knowing that Anna and I both have done it, that we do it daily and we live it, we're not giving some advice that we don't have any experience on. This is what we do, this is how we are, and we want to share it with everyone so that they can have that in their lives as well. Really bring some knowledge that is you can apply to your life and able to make changes that are going to put you back in control of your finances and your sovereignty.
Yeah, and I mean, just to clarify, we don't give advice. We're sharing our own journey and resources that we've toiled through. Of course, everyone this we're not telling anyone what to do. Everyone has you have to go through it yourself because if you let someone just do all this stuff for you and you just fill in the blanks, you're not actually being sovereign. Your own mentality has to be sovereign. Your mind has to be sovereign itself. So if you're just following someone else's lead, then you're not gonna make it anyways. Also, that's not what we're doing either. We want to share things, and you need to know how the picture comes together yourself before you take any actions that you and only you, the living man or woman, are responsible for. I just want to clarify that
Yeah,
as
it's,
we go
it's
through
huge,
here.
and it's a huge thing to clarify because the problem people have is, for the most part, is no one that has not restored themselves back to the land has any control over anything, right? Um,
Mhm.
you know, and coming back to the land, you can really only have control over these things if you have learned about them and accept responsibility for yourself and are willing to take control of that responsibility.
Right, right, and that actually is a perfect segue into something that I heard a couple people discussing today, and I don't think it really got to the bottom of the question, but is what James just said is that you don't really own anything and get into the place where you do. And let's dive into that, because we had people, people talk about, and we'll dive into everything eventually, but people do talk about the birth certificate thing and all this. And well, oh, my mortgage is paid off. Don't I own my house? Well, people don't even realize that what you're going to is a title. That's where do you get titles? Well, from the royalty, from the king. They're the ones who bestow titles. Also, registry. Regis is a Latin word for king. Registry is the king's stuff. So, or the royal, real estate, royal estate. So,
Real estate, exactly. It's
and
all a trick.
And that's where you're at, real estate, right?
The system of registry is fraud and deception.
Mm-hmm. So we're gonna share stuff like this. We might repeat ourselves. We might miss some stuff. There's just so much to go over. But that's, all these little things, the registry, the royalty, all that kind of stuff. It'll all click eventually, and you'll see the whole picture.
You'll see the word trickery in all the words.
Yeah. So as we go through, we don't want to focus on the negativity. You got a lot of people making a lot of videos about Trump this, blah, 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 that, and all this, when it really doesn't matter if we are, because when we say restoring the government, we don't mean, voting on a bunch of other people to take care of our stuff. We're the ones that are supposed to do the self-government. And if we need to hire people out, such as people like Donald Trump to be a commander-in-chief, that's exactly what it is hiring people out. It's contracting. So we talk about this stuff. We're not going to be talking about the negativity or the speculation. We're talking about exactly how it is. This is self-government and building out from there.
Yes, not affiliations with other parties, but self-governing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and I think what we'll do is probably do some kind of specialized shows. I know, James, we want to talk about, and I need to learn about the land patenting and how that goes. So we'll probably do some more specialized, whatever you want to call it, episodes, broadcasts, whatever, on things like that,
Absolutely.
Land patents and specialized things.
And real estate is what I've done for years. I know the Regis real estate Kingsland side of things very well, and I know its limitations. And I've been researching the land patent for better than a year now, and applying it to my life. So, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to talk about how we've applied these solutions to our lives, so that then therefore you can learn from that and learn how you can apply these solutions to your life and your sovereignty.
Mm-hmm. And let's just while we're talking about it, let's connect this. So the reason you also don't own anything, and why the king is being whatever, the steward or the owner, is because, and when we say coming back to land, is coming back to the land jurisdiction rather than the jurisdiction that's commerce and all fiction. It's all paper. It's all shadows. So none of that stuff's real. They only care about the paper stuff, the shadow. The substance is the actual body, which comes from the land and will go to the land, is the real, the realm of us people. And so when we're, the majority of the country obviously is not inhabiting the land in actually in the eyes of the scam, whatever, the scam artist, the fraud. So this is how it connects from being on the land to then being able to own stuff. When you're not on the land, you're just a fiction, and the king or whomever in the registry is
administering your estate.
Yeah, administering your estate.
Mm-hmm.
And also, if they give you benefits, they want to take their cut out of your estate. So
yes, or take your benefits away when as a privilege, because they've bestowed a privilege on you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And all of this is contracts, so we'll probably hammer that a lot. Every time you take a benefit, you take a privilege, none of that's for free. Welfare is not free.
Yes, there are adhesion contracts attached to any benefit that they provide you.
Mm-hmm. So looks like we burned through a lot of the introduction. And what I said is we'll probably do a couple together and a couple, interviews out, maybe us two and someone else. We'll just, see how it flows, see how it goes. But we did have a few things after the introductions that we wanted to kind of go over today. Is just that. So with I I'm proud, and also it's it's a little frantic because you see so many people in so short a time really grasping that what they've called the government is the US government is a corporation. And there's a lot of people think, and I'm proud. I was glad that people are realizing that's what it is, but now they don't really even know how to assimilate that information. So we've been dealing with this for a while. This is not new to us. And news flash is I don't know how many there's been over the years, 10 or 12 or 20 or 100, but there's definitely within the last few years, there's at least two, three, definitely two. There's the municipal and the territorial. Yeah, that's really the main two that most people would need to know about. And then there's been different layers and versions of those over the years. Where right after the um, Civil War was a different bankrupt corporation, and when we had the market crash and the institution of the Federal Reserve as a different corporation. So it's not this one thing that's been happening over the years as one little fraud or one big fraud. It's definitely one big fraud, but there's multiple players that come in there, and it's not as simple as just saying it's a corporation versus not a corporation.
Yep. Well, it's in reality, corporations can be shut down and new ones can be opened up and assets can be rolled from one to another. And that's really what's happened.
Mm-hmm.
They bankrupted corporations and opened up new ones and rolled over all the assets over into the new corporation without telling
Yeah.
anyone.
Yeah, they realized they could really extract more wealth, energy, life force out of the populace through this system that seems like you're in control when you're not than they could when they were using the serfdom and the fiefdom type stuff.
Yep.
So it's just the next generation. And also, this is always a good one to talk about. In my view, this is even more, I don't know if I'd say it's more sinister, but they're at the point where it's so voluntary that they're okay with how much they steal from people because they're just like, well, you're an idiot. You didn't realize what we were doing, all this stuff, when really it's still unconscionable because they didn't teach you the language that you needed to know. And yeah.
Yep. And everyone is a ward, and that's why they hire an attorney, because they're not competent enough to speak for themselves as being a dead person. Because
Mm-hmm.
that's really what you are when you're that birth certificate. You were probated as a baby, and ever since a child, you have been a dead person, lost at sea, and the corporation's been administering your estate for you and giving you that dead person a few privileges and been taking their lion's share of your wealth for all of your
Mm-hmm.
life. And some people, from the day they were born until the day they died, they never knew it. Like my father.
Yeah. Yeah. The light, yeah, it's the life force, really. And when there's a lot of good narrations on the story, so we can't go too deep into the story of like when FDR did the New Deal, and basically when he did that, beforehand it was the government officials, well, how are we going to support the people when it's the people who support and pay us? And that's when they figured out how to flip things around.
Mm-hmm.
And so then to make the people as dependents on the government. Well, they never actually said the people, because the people should be out taking care of themselves. So it's then the persons and the U.S. citizens and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. And my father was actually born prior to birth certificate creation.
Oh,
So,
wow.
and it was always interesting, as I was, when my father was still alive, I would hear him tell, I ask him, well, how did he get a birth certificate? And he said, well, they came door to door. They wanted to know who lived in the household, and they created birth certificates for everyone. And literally, literally just overnight, just turned everybody into a dead person.
That's wild.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's just like, hey, sign this bond so we can get billions of dollars off of you. But there you go.
Off your labor.
So yeah, yeah, and I'm sure we'll do another one diving into the birth certificate. That is an important one, but it's also it ties in with everything. And as you learn how to come back onto the land, you fix that stuff as well.
Yep.
So we wanted to address the corporate thing. Mentioned that we're going to probably be diving into that some more, and we'll definitely talk about it because it ties in with everything. So we'll enumerate which corporation you have that you're uh, reconveying things from and everything such as that. We also wanted to mention, since the veil is dropped and everyone has realized it's a corporation, all that. Now they're like, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? Well, first off, we wanted to mention that we have the common law. And I know there's a lot of misconceptions about what that means, but that's one of the things that we want to dive into, because the original Constitution that was that the Constitution for the United States of America, which creates the United States of America, and that was also a corporation. It's still a employment contract, right? But this was the one that dealt with the people, the relationship between the people and the government. So that was actually still founded on the American common law. And the American common law is still here and usable. It's just that people don't realize every time they consent to leaving that American common law. And the common law also, it's funny because you hear a lot of like anarchist philosophers and the voluntarists or communists or this or that. How's society gonna work when X, Y, and Z happens and this and that? Well, I couldn't believe that now that I learned about the common law, I couldn't believe that no one ever in those circles ever even mentioned it, when the common law was the system built by the people to, number one, to seek truth and to uphold every man or woman's individual right, and that was it. So it was to be fair, yeah, and that was it. And so they had the due process, and that seeks truth. And then every other kind of law, which is the law made by man, which says a man or a group of men can say this law is this, and they can interpret it. All of that falls under Roman civil law. And whether it doesn't matter what they call it, there's either Roman civil law or common law, which common law was, derived from natural law, God's law. These are just immutable things. The sun comes up, will come up tomorrow. So this is another thing we want to discuss, because you got a lot of people asking, what are we going to do?
And each one of those has a separate, essentially a book and what governs it, right? So like, your commercial law, your Roman civil law is governed by Black's law book, which is, Black's law, let's just be real, they changed the meaning of all the words. That's why everyone's been tricked. If you look up the meanings of the words that you think are the meaning, it's not the meaning in the way that the law views it.
Not at all.
we're governed by a different law book. The law of the land, the common law, is a different set of laws. It is based in God's law and the Ten Commandments.
And truth. And upholding each man's due process and their rights. And yeah, to note, the word man, if you look at it in the Constitution and you look at the dictionary that goes with the Constitution, which would be Bouvier's, it says when they reference man, it means mankind. It means men and women. So somewhere along the line, you got tricked into thinking that men had more rights than women. And I would say this was the injected division into the founding fathers, blah, blah, blah.
Yep. And if you look up person in Black's law, it says monster. That's what it says. It's monster. That's what you are in the law, in their law books, in Roman civil law. The book that defines what the words mean says you're a monster.
Yeah,
so how do you think they're going to treat you if you're a monster? Probably not very good, right? Like Frankenstein.
Yeah, when you add the word hue, so let's look at that in etymologies. Hue is color. So when someone says color of something, color of law, that means it's colored like as it is the law, but it's not actually the
It
law.
appears
So
as
you say
such, but it's not
hue
actually.
man. Yeah, right, exactly. Hue man is it's sort of human.
Appears as such, but not really.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's a word made by man. So you got to also remember this is a God's law type thing is the creator is never governed by what it creates. So let's make that line up better. The creator is always above the created. So man creates government, then government doesn't dictate to man. So unless you're acting as a human, which is another creation of that. So when they make up words and you adopt those words, that's kind of what you're saying, and it is subconscious. You're ceding your sovereignty to other entities using that. So it's all in the language. There's multiple languages. There's different English. Don't let them fool you.
It is
There's
spellcraft in
yeah,
words.
literally. I mean,
Literally. Yep.
when they say black magic, it's not the stuff they show you on TV with witches and all that. It's the spells, the language.
And it's no coincidence. It's called Black's Law.
Nope,
It's no
nope.
coincidence.
I always thought about they're all named with B. There's blacks, there's Bouviers, there's Ballantines, there's yeah,
There's something with that B. I don't know what it is.
yeah,
There's something deep in there, but we haven't unearthed that one yet, Ammon.
yeah.
Someday maybe.
Well, I'm a language guy, and I've got a bunch of books in front of me. You can't see them in that camera, but I'll come to the bottom of that
Mine are
sometime.
behind me too, and there's about 400 of them over there. So
Yeah, it's and so when I was working through waking up, I guess for lack of a better word, that's when I was always thought that the internet might has just everything. So you could look up the internet and have a paper on this, and people would die. The internet has almost nothing compared to what's in books that you could find. The internet's totally controlled. I
completely
mean, it might
controlled
have it, but
information.
you can't search it.
Controlled information, absolutely, from the get
Books
go.
are yeah. Physical media is king.
It is.
Absolutely.
It's real.
Yeah.
It's not virtual.
Mm-hmm. And that's so all that stuff works on consent. Bringing you into that system, and you can see they're trying to get people to consent into going into an even deeper, more artificial system right now.
They are.
You'll talk about this the era of the air jurisdiction, not even the sea. So like all the money is in the air jurisdiction and stuff like that. It's wild.
Yeah, I mean, how much of the money now is moving? So currency. Things are going two ways, right? Currency is moving to digital currency, which is cryptocurrency. And then there's the other side. A lot of people are saying, yeah, I want gold. I want silver. So you're seeing a lot of flight into gold and physical silver now, too. People are there's two camps, really, and things are going in two directions at the same
Physical
time.
media. I know. One of the radio programs I listen to, Media Monarchy, it's all listener supported, and it's the James shout out. He always is talking about physical media. He's got a full record library. He does all his radio shows is on record. He's got books, and him and James Corbett. I like how they pump the physical media because I've been on that too. Because if things go controlled, which they already are, they show that the Hathi Trust or whatever owns all digital copies of all books and all the libraries, which is just crazy. And they're starting to clamp down on that. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't.
So there's when they started the Corona scam, they the physical libraries closed, right? Well, those libraries, and I don't have the exact full story. I know James talked about it, James Corbett, but they're the physical library is obviously closed, and those were benefits from the Rockefeller family and a lot of those kind of shady charitable organizations, and
Ford Foundation, Kellogg Foundation.
I
Rockefeller
think
Foundation.
the ownership rights of all those books end up going to something called the Hathi Trust, who also has them in digital form. So now they're trying to do this digital library where you can't look at the digital book and just download the PDF. You actually have to borrow it, and you have to sign up to be able to look at it for an hour. And they're trying to block the screenshots, and they're really trying to lock down the physical books, and it's scary.
Because information is power, and they want to keep people powerless,
Mm-hmm.
and control their ability to access the information as people really start to question, because the veils come down, like you said. I mean, so many people have realized, wow, it is a corporation. Wow, this is all a big scam. It's all a big lie. Our currency, the stock market, real estate, all of it is continuing to hyperinflate. Meanwhile, my wages and my earnings haven't hyperinflated to match the hyperinflation of the currency.
Mm, yeah. And because as they've moved out of the physical, which is a stopgap, keeps some manipulation out. As they moved out, they kind of fooled people into thinking, oh, it's not manipulated that much. And man, I think they've just really the amounts of money that are not on the books that we can't see that are in the private is just, I'm sure it's insane.
Yeah.
That they've kind of hoarded away until now when so we actually have a shortage of labor when people don't go to work and they don't have the job. So you actually have a shortage of gross domestic product or whatever, the actual physical product, right? But you have a surplus of money. I mean, you're pumping 3 trillion in there, 3 trillion in there, and then all the money that they have saved up, the people who are planning this kind of reset. So as they use that money, it actually doesn't have the value that it should, because they've, a good example is saying like the dollar to silver or dollar to gold ratio of what's out there, right? Do you know what I'm talking about? So if we have for every ounce of gold, this is just an example. You can look at the debt clock. It tells you this. So every ounce of gold out there, there's $50,000 or 100,000 US dollars. And the debt clock does not count all the like derivatives and the craziness out there. But so really, if our currency was connected to gold, then the gold should be worth about $100,000 or however much dollar to gold ratio it is. So that's how far off of the physical. So when we don't have physical labor and creation of goods, we have all this money coming in. It's not really equalizing out just because of the coronavirus going, or the interruptions in our economy. So it's an advantage to those who have all this paper money that's worthless, right? They're just throwing it out there, and they're accomplishing things, and that couldn't last forever. They're doing it because this was the time planned for.
It's the race to zero, literally, where literally the money's worth nothing. Because, well, it's not even money; it's currency. It's not money. It's not backed by anything. Money's backed by something. This currency that's used in the United States, the dollar, the Federal Reserve note, is backed by nothing. They say it's backed by gold, but 40% of every dollar printed was printed in the last year. Right now, 40%. That's mind blowing. That is literally mind blowing. How does that continue without it literally going to a point of implosion?
Yeah.
Or complete servitude, one or the other.
So on that debt clock, look at the silver to gold or silver to dollar ratio and gold to dollar ratio, and you'll see kind of how they've exploded it. You can actually go backwards in time too, so it might be something fun for our listeners to check out.
This is why this is, I mean, we're not the only ones paying attention to this. I mean, there's plenty of smart people that don't know a solution to get out of the system, but they see that, this is real. This currency devaluation is very real. And that they want gold and silver because they're real. People want something real. They want to get they know having assets in the stock market long term is not a smart play. They know that having it in a bank is not a smart play. So they want something real. And, just as of last week, we saw silver and gold suppliers limiting purchases, or closing down the ability to make a physical purchase in gold and silver because of the limits that they had on accessing it. So, at some point, if everybody's demanded silver, um, they don't have the silver to cover it. They don't have the gold to cover it.
And yeah, that's another good kind of piercing of the veil that's just come out for people is number one, that the market's rigged. It doesn't, if the people start winning over the governments and the regulators and the big corps,
Shut it
then
down.
yeah, you're out of here. And then also the paper market, as in like paper silver, is not connected to the physical market.
Correct. And
To
they've literally detached from each other. Literally. They're like, we're going opposite direction because there's so much more paper silver and paper gold contracts that are out there than there is actual physical. So if everybody that held a paper or gold contract said, here's my paper, I want real, I want physical, literally that whole forex market a COMEX market would explode overnight because they don't have it. There's 100 times more silver contracts written than there is physical silver available.
yeah, they do that for
Just
the
like
dollar
derivatives
too.
in the stock market, like
Derivatives.
that's why we had in '08, in the Big Short when we had literally, people were betting on derivatives. That's why things imploded then because the derivative market is probably 1,000 times more than the actual stock market.
Yeah, if not more.
Right.
And it's like 1,000 times worse than it was in 2008, which was just an excuse for them to do something they wanted to do. But it's bad. I mean, but this is why we're talking about it ties in so perfectly to the being on the land and in the real and a physical jurisdiction rather than being in the artificial, the commerce, the maritime. And that's why you really have to, that's why we want to talk, because it's not just some conspiracy thing to look into and theorize about. It's really that simple. There's a realm of the substance and the not substance. And are you 1 foot in one foot in the other? Are you 60-40? Where do you want to be?
Mm-hmm.
And if the dollar collapses, you should be in the realm of the real. You'll be fine.
Yeah, because your assets are based on something that is real, that it's tangible. Whether it's the gardens in your backyard or the chickens and animals you have and the silver coins that you have and the piece of land that you inhabit and the home that you live in and share with the people you love. These are real things that you can always touch and that you can give to your children, your heirs. Um, they're real. No matter what happens, that's your estate. That is your real estate. That's your real estate.
The real one.
Yep.
Not the royal one, the real one.
Yep.
Um,
So it's interesting to look up in Bouvier's law what a real estate is versus Black's law.
mm-hmm.
I would suggest people do that.
Yeah, and for those doing it, just remember it's multiple languages, but it's also it's more than just one definition. You'll have different definitions and different versions of Bouvier's, and they're going to be totally different than the definitions in Black's.
Yep.
And this is why you have to always ask questions and know where you're being referred to. Like, is it the original Greek, or are we talking about a matrix within a matrix within a matrix within a matrix?
Mm-hmm.
Just like the U.S. corporate is like, if you ask them and you're in that court system, you're considered public, but it's public within another wider private. Like, it's a private law, so everything they talk about inside their umbrella is public when they talk about public. But that's not true public law if you zoom out and go to the common law level. You know what I'm saying? So it's a good explanation of the different layers of in which way are you referring to this word. So different dictionaries. You got Webster's. I like the 1828. That's another good one. The Webster's 1828. It's not a law dictionary. It's just an American English dictionary. And That's the first one I actually saw where it said for human being, and it said, quote, "see monster," like look up the word monster. So
Yeah, they weren't trying to hide it then like they are now. They buried all that stuff. You got to dig
yeah,
deeper if you want to find it now. You got to go into their books, their law books. They don't put it in a dictionary because that's just too simple. The common man can read a dictionary, but you talk law. Most people say, "Oh, I don't know anything about law. I need an attorney to talk law."
mm-hmm.
Like, that's because you're working within their system that is designed to trick you, and you don't, uh, you're not sovereign, and you're accepting their uh, ownership of you, and you need a mouthpiece. You can't speak for yourself.
Mm-hmm. And that's even how they trip up different lawyers. They make them so specialized that they have one definition, but they don't even realize, going outwards to different definitions too. So it's a whole, it's a self-supporting system of, everybody's got to have their expert in X, Y, and Z and can't, learn how to manage your own affairs. And that's what the common law is about.
Managing your own affairs.
You do not have a lawyer. You can counsel with people, but you're supposed to know exactly how agreements work and how you're supposed to live day to day. That way you don't get taken advantage of. And it's not that complicated. We've just been really confused.
Yep. And your word should be your bond. And in common law, your word is your bond.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm working through one of those common law books and talking about the history of it. And it is just wild that we've had such a system, and the system literally is the safeguard against like monarchy or dictator totalitarian powers coming in from the outside and oppressing the people, because this was the people's law and the crown had to follow it, working through those people, and all the different periods throughout history where it would be Roman civil law, be ecclesiastical law, canon law that infringes, and they take over the universities, and then they don't ever teach the common law, and people forget about what it is. And then it has a resurfacing here. So it's thousands of years of that. And they almost deleted it from the history books over the last 100 years. But we still have it.
We still have it. And we're trying to restore it.
Yeah, and so little moving on from there with the another thing we're seeing people talking about is a new Declaration of Independence, right? So we want to go through some of this stuff because we have, not we as in me and James, but we as in us, the people of the world, actually, not just the United States of America, not just America, but the world has a land jurisdiction. And the world, there's a lot of places still have common law as the foundation. So we hear people talking about a new Declaration of Independence, but this was a fraud and being perpetrated against us. It was nefarious, but it was also voluntary. And so it's a maxim of law that however a thing is bound, it needs to be unbound. So you can't just go and declare a new declaration. And first off, we don't need to. And that's what James and I want to talk about. But if you do it that way, you're just going to cause a whole bunch of violence. We have everything we need. We have the common law, we have the original Constitution, the original Declaration. They're still all valid. We just need to coach people on how to not voluntarily give up that protection.
Or allow somebody else to throw some other trick and monkey wrench in here. Because that's what will happen. Like, our forefathers had a lot more insight and were a lot more knowledgeable, I think, than most people give them credit. And, and Am and I had this conversation. It's like, why would we want to create a new constitution when we literally have a document written by sovereigns that understood what it meant to be a sovereign under God? with liberty and justice for all.
And it wasn't an automatic thing. It's not like a set it and forget it thing. I mean, you look at all the founding fathers and they all say, yeah, you have a republic and you'll be free so long as you maintain that and work very hard to do that. And as soon as you don't, I mean, somebody's going to come in and trick you into giving up all you own. And that's what it is.
Yep.
They are tyrannical, but they are doing it voluntarily, technically.
Mm-hmm. And simply they realize that if we make it walk like a duck and talk like a duck, people will think it's a duck.
Make it a person, put on a mask, and there you go. Yep. Well, that's a good one going around, that the word person in the Latin, the persona, is referred to as a mask too. So, yeah, just a fun one as the peak of this fraud happens and making everyone wear a mask.
Yeah. It's crazy how deep the deception goes, but it literally goes all the way to the core of the base core of what people, who they think they are and what they think they are, when in reality there's something other.
It's the core of the language. Like I could do a whole hour on this, but the even with the name and 99.99% of people, you ask them, are you so and so, and you insert their name, they're gonna say yeah. But even no matter, like, even if it's the Christian appellation and upper and lowercase, not the all uppercase, you still aren't your name. The reason they call it an appellation, and they say appellation, and you dive into that word, appeal is what the root word of that is, and it's to call out, right? And back in the day, because you cannot sue or bring a sovereign into court, as in like the king or queen, or any true sovereign, you cannot sue them involuntarily. So what you have to do is appeal to them, and you ask them, where you're going to stand up for yourself and come and address this issue. And that's why they call it an appeal, because you call out to them and they choose to answer. So you call out, your majesty, blah blah blah. That's an appeal. They don't have to answer to that appeal. And that's why they call it an appellation, because you choose to answer to your name. But if you were to get knocked out and have a concussion and forget your name, you don't cease to be, Nope. Even if you don't remember your name is James, you're still there. So you're not your name. And this is, the core of like who we even are. So this is what we're trying to untangle.
Yeah. And just because you ask me, is my name James Harner, I don't have to answer it.
Right. And you could say, I can go by that name, I own that name, all that, but you still exist without the name.
Yep.
So remember,
still a
folks,
living soul without the name.
And so you can see in the pop culture how they're trying to wrap that up even tighter when they're trying to say you are your sexuality, you are your gender, which is still another made up thing. Like even male and female is made up, right?
That's how you categorize animals.
Right.
Right?
Cattle.
Yeah.
Chattel.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yep. There's only one thing on this earth that's a man and a woman. That's it. And that's living souls.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. We're not male and female or something in between, one of 27 other things. We're man and woman. That's what we are.
And even when you go further than that, and you are just the living soul, that there's no man or woman. It's just the living soul, and there's no name. There's no nothing. You're a consciousness, an entity. So whether you believe in the soul or any of that, that your consciousness is still separate from your body. Like, so this is them going one way, and that's to tighten up the fraud even more. But so many people have woken up and are realizing, but they're trying to figure all this stuff out. So we just want to have some good conversations and dive into this stuff. I mean, it's interesting.
Yeah, and to be real, I mean, it's not like we've got all the solutions. We don't. I mean, we're still figuring it out. I mean, everybody that has gotten to where we've gotten to, with restoring their sovereignty and coming back to the land, we're restoring it. We're figuring it out as we go. Like literally, they didn't want anybody to figure any of this out. There's just some really bright people that blazed the trail, and we're following the trail that's been blazed. and we're trying to take it to the next step to restore it, literally, so that we have a restored land, functioning land government again. That we the men and women are responsible for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's totally. I mean, we don't have all we don't have. I don't have any of the answers for you. I have some trails for you to follow, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is that. It's biblical, but it doesn't even have to be biblical when you say revelation. Things are being revealed, the veil is dropping. It's also what apocalypse means, is the revelation. So, and those words are interchangeable. Most don't even know that.
Yep.
So, and none of this stuff too is really, it's not rigid. And when we say this word has this etymology, there can totally be an opposing etymology with that word that means something totally different, and they're both wrapped up in there. It is up to the sovereign, the living soul, to give it the energy in which way you mean it, and to wield that power of that word. I mean, because you're the language.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I mean, more than just Christianity, and it's that God created the world with the word. I mean, that's the beginning, the word.
Yeah.
We'll dive into that more. That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I think it was a pretty good introduction. We had a few other things I wrote down. I just wanted to give people a little bit of encouragement to not. So we obviously, there's going to be a lot of negative and naysayers out there, and a lot of them are trolls. Some of them are paid trolls. Some of them are agents. So like, it's not worth our energy to go and debunk or rebunk or answer every kind of calling out of whatever. But like honest questions, of course, and also people who are kind of in between. So we see a lot of people who are a little disheartened. They say, okay, say I believe all this and it's totally true, and I can, make the proper declarations and start, managing my own affairs and living on the land. Well, this cop is just gonna, run right over me, and that's not gonna matter anyways because no one follows the law. Well, we have firsthand experience that it is in the tricks. That is their whole game. If they don't trick you into giving you their consent, I mean, that's 99% of it right there. And so they want you to question it and to be like, wow, it's not going to work anyways. They're all powerful. They just do whatever they want. But we are here to say no.
And it's that, and the second element of this is jurisdiction. And when you're chattel, when you are someone else is administering your estate for you, they have jurisdiction over you. When you have come back to the land and you have refuted their adhesion contracts and their documents claiming to have probated your estate and claiming to administering your estate through the trust, you have exposed the fraud and taken your ownership of your name and taking ownership of your life and responsibility for yourself. That's kind of kryptonite to them in a lot of respects, because they know they don't have jurisdiction over you. And as long as you don't voluntarily give them jurisdiction back, you maintain your sovereignty. But they will try and trick you. They will try and trick you into giving it back to them.
Test you. They have every right to test you and see if you know what you're talking about and see if you'll stand your ground.
Yep.
Stand your ground. But they
absolutely
know.
You got to know who you are, and you got to know what it is that you're overstanding. You're not understanding the law. You're overstanding it because you have control of it. You are sovereign.
Mm-hmm. You got no reason to deal with those commercial, for-profit, private courts that have everything stacked up against you,
That want you to understand their law, which means you stand underneath their law.
And think about what they say. Oh, well, you need to You need to plead either guilty or not guilty. You know what both of those say when you do it? They both say, you're right. You stand over me. I'm underneath whatever jurisdiction you deal with, and I choose to fight it in this way or that way. That's all you.
I accept you having jurisdiction over me. I accept that your color of law as being what is going to rule over me. It's it's really what it is. You have accepted their jurisdiction.
Yeah, and I think James and I probably both have the same philosophy here too. Is that when confronted like that, you're still not ever gonna be. There's no reason to be like, no, you don't have any jurisdiction over me. No, you can't do this, or you can't. You have to do this. It's like simple questions of like, well, how can I even? If you can explain to me how I can answer that question properly when I'm not, I have nothing to do with your commercial system, I'll answer it for you. That's what you say when things like, you know, the UCC 3 dash or 1 308, when you are allowed to say, I'm not agreeing to any invisible contracts. You say, I'm not agreeing to this contract. I'm curious of how I can answer this question. And like I said, that's not advice. It's just a way to think about it when they put you on the spot. Say, you need to say yes or no. You need to ask them a question. Don't say yes or no, because it's who's king. It's the one who's asking
The question,
as
exactly
king.
right. And anybody that is answering their questions is accepting um, the contract. I mean, the contract is voluntary acceptance.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, there is such thing as coercion, of course. I mean, as soon as you
Hard to prove once they've got jurisdiction.
right. So
Jurisdiction
like,
is the key element. Once they have it and you've accepted their jurisdiction over you, then it's an uphill battle.
yeah. Yeah, and these are all just, details, but it's a good thing to point out to people that, obviously we're not saying that, of course, you not get a kind of a prick, banging on your window, pulling a gun on you, saying you need to, assent to me. We're not saying that doesn't happen, but you'd be surprised how much they actually do know. They know. They're just trying to push your buttons. That's why,
And
and if you really,
accept their law, accept their color of law. That's what it is. Accept their color of law and accept their jurisdiction. They need you to contract with them, that's why they say to you, "Do you understand?"
mm-hmm. and when you're walking in the truth, you need to have the clarity of mind and the calmness to be able to not let them rile you up. So this is why you need to know what you're doing. You can't just let someone else do it for you, because you need to be able to calmly respond to and diffuse that and get through it. I got a lot of hothead friends. They would have just been in handcuffs, immediately, because they got an attitude.
Yep.
But that's, and these guys too, none of them are the ones perpetrating. They're not making cajillions of dollars off the fraud. They're just the lowly, they don't really, I mean, some of them have psychological issues, but they don't really want to just screw over everybody. So like, work with them, try and figure out the way to get through it without escalating it.
And to be real, they're all taught what language to use. They're taught what words to say. They all are trained on how to operate under the color of law.
Yeah.
It's training. They call it police training.
I actually figured out the other day how you're right when you say it's the color of law, because they're trying to make you think that it's a statute that you have to follow, right? And how they can still truthfully say that it's law. When they say it's law, they're not actually referring to the statutes. They're referring to the agreement you made with your driver's license to obey what they said. It doesn't just, a law is a law and everybody has to obey it. You've agreed to obey to it. Yep. Through different adhesion contracts, and that's what they say, the law of contracts. You made an agreement. So
even
it's
though
just
you were correct and you didn't know it, you still are bound to it because you accepted the benefits. And when you accept the benefits, you also accept the liabilities that they want to, which is the law. That's the liability.
Yeah.
The color
And of course,
law.
course, sometimes you don't have a choice. They just send you money, but that's when you need to still explicitly say, I'm not silently consenting to
Mm-hmm.
any of this.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why you need to know who you are. Know when you're being entrapped, when somebody's putting you in that situation, they're giving you something. Here, take this. Like the postal service. The carrier's just gone for the last 2 weeks here, so I was wondering where all my mail was, and there's this huge line at the post office, everybody trying to pick it up, and so they're like, oh, this is crap, I can't believe they just go away and now we have to pick up our mail. And I told a couple of them, I said, well, you know why the USPS operates at a loss? They operate at a loss because when you pay postage, that only covers the cost from going to where you drop it off to the nearest post office to the address, right? And then that's why they call it rural free delivery, because they do the delivery part for free at a loss. So that way they can say that they gave you something for free, aka a benefit, that then holds you to another contract. And these people were like, whoa. And I was like, because they were talking about suing for this stuff because they weren't getting their bills and stuff. And I'm like, but this is in the law of like how the post office works. You only paid for it to get to the office. They give you the delivery for free as a benefit. And so they were mine was blown. It actually had an older lady standing next to me, and she's like, yep, general delivery is what you pay for. Everything else is free. She's like, I used to have general delivery or general post, whatever it is.
And you pick
That's
it
the
up,
common
and you
law.
pick it up at the post office, right?
Yeah. And you don't have an address because the address is a commercial
Military
thing that they
jurisdiction.
own.
That's the military
Yeah.
jurisdiction. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. The USPS is part of the military. Yeah, maybe we'll dive into that one another time. Yeah, thinking about that. Commander in Chief, military. That's the military roads. All right. Anything else we want to add as we finish this up? I think it was a good kind of introduction to.
I think that's a lot of info, and I think it's a pretty good introduction. I think as we move forward, we'll hammer on a specific topic. I think that when we bring guests on, again, we'll focus on a specific topic that a guest is an expert at, because I think people need to be able to have deeper dives into specific areas of your sovereignty and how you can maintain it, because
Mhm.
there are multiple ways that they're going to try and pull you back in.
Yeah, and it's not just the common law, sovereignty thing. We're both more than just that we talk about. So spiritual side of things and everything. So yeah, I think we have some good stuff that we can get into. I got some already some past guests that I had meant to do the interviews with, and I was working things out, trying to figure out the way I'm going to do things, and I'd say this one went pretty well, and I'm ready to continue with this.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to be able to bring more light to the darkness that's all around us. I mean, really, quite honestly, we are the light. Let's shine it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I got it written. My girlfriend wrote it on the fridge. It said, "The darkness is close, but the light is closer." So,
Amen to that.
all right, everybody. Thanks for listening, James. I'll cut the recording, and we
Yeah.
can.
Thanks, everybody.
We'll talk to y'all another time. Take care.
Till next time.